The Radeon Vega Frontier Edition, a card launched in 2017 as the start of the Vega series prior to the more consumer-aimed cards, was primarily aimed at professionals or gamers with deep pockets. With its 16GB of VRAM, though, it makes an interesting card in our current times where many of the tech journalism headlines are focused on the lacking 8GB of VRAM many graphics cards of the past few years have come equipped with. Today, I'd like to compare how the Vega Frontier Edition performs in comparison with the tried and true 8GB RX 580. Back when released, a big selling point for the Vega FE was that the drivers could be switched on the fly between professional and gaming modes, which could have been appealing for some developers. While today the unified Pro and Adrenaline drivers with a switch appear to have been discontinued, you can still choose to install either set of drivers. AMD has recently removed the Adrenaline driver from the Vega Frontier Edition downloads page though, and I apologize as that was probably my fault, as I contacted them as to why in September of 2023 it was showing the RDNA Adrenaline driver branch on the downloads page. Instead of just swapping to the Vega Polaris branch, however, they appear to have just removed it entirely. All is well though. Just go to the Vega 64 page, and that Adrenaline driver recognizes your card as a Vega Frontier Edition. Performance adjustments for undervolting, overclocking, fan curve adjustments, and power tuning even still work under the current Adrenaline drivers. It just requires a small registry tweak, which you can find a short about in the top corner of the video, or in the video description below. In these tests, I've left the card stock though, aside from ramping up the fan curve a bit. For the test system comparing the Vega Frontier Edition and RX 580, we have a third-generation Intel platform with a Xeon E3 1280 V2, which is very similar to an i7 3770K, all paired with 16GB of DDR3 at 1600 megatransfers per second. While this platform is older, it still holds up decently well, though may hold back both cards sometimes, which I'll discuss later in the video. So let's get started with the benchmarks, the data for which was recorded in late 2023, with each test being run 5 times for each card. Tech PowerUp's GPU database would suggest that the Vega FE is approximately 58% more powerful than the RX 580, so starting out with Cyberpunk 2077, we see something fairly close to that, with an increase of approximately 46% in average FPS for the Vega FE over the RX 580. And even some nice small gains on the 1% and 0.1% lows, all of which are outside of uncertainty in the measurements. Next up, we have Fortnite, where while we see a small increase in the average frame rate for the Vega FE, the 1% and 0.1% lows actually got worse. My guess in this case would be that perhaps with the higher performing Vega, we're running into that CPU bottleneck a bit more, resulting in some stutter that the measurements are picking up on, though which weren't noticeable to my eyes. Considering our 3rd-gen Intel CPU is going on 12 years old though, I think we can forgive it. If you'd like to see a CPU upgrade unleash the Vega FE though, I hope you'll consider subscribing below, so you don't miss that future video. Next up is Honkai Star Rail, with the 60 FPS cap left in place. Both cards run essentially identically here, well within uncertainty of each other on the measurements due to that 60 FPS cap of the game. Another capped game in our list is Lost Ark, where it is capped the monitor refresh rate at 75 Hz. Even so, the Vega FE is able to egg out a small lead, though it's so close to being within uncertainty shown by our error bars, I'd barely call it a lead. Next up, and perhaps one of the most important scenarios for that extra VRAM the Vega FE is packing, is VRChat. Here, in desktop mode, I've benchmarked 4 different worlds with no other players to get a repeatable measurement, including the use of video players and the ever-present mirrors. Overall, the Vega FE has a slight lead in average FPS everywhere, though curiously in 2 worlds, rather than a lead for the Vega FE in 1% and 0.1% lows, we actually saw them fall behind the RX 580 again. These two, the Black Cat and Treehouse in the Shade, are more complicated VR worlds though, so perhaps we're encountering that CPU bottleneck again. Think that gorgeous 16GB of HBM2 VRAM will be enough for your friends' unoptimized avatars? While who knows if it's all truly in use, I've sadly encountered many a time in VRChat where it's all been allocated. Closing up with an easy-to-repeat benchmark, if you'd like to compare your performance, we have the Final Fantasy XV benchmark, which is always quite pretty to watch. Here we see a nice 57% increase over the RX 580 for the Vega FE, very close to that 58% increase we'd expect based on the Tech Power Up database. Indeed, so many frames, Meiyun, so many. So while the Vega FE definitely leads over the RX 580, it would appear we're CPU bottlenecked in some cases for both GPUs. How can I guarantee this? Leaving my monitoring tools open for a long time while running various games, the RX 580 GPU utilization would often bounce from 0% to 100% very frequently, while the Vega FE in many titles often bounces into the 90% range as the max GPU utilization, but usually significantly less than that for the Vega FE, as can be seen on the graph. Both cards are being held back at times, but the Vega Frontier Edition certainly has a lot more power to show us. I hope you'll consider leaving a like below and perhaps subscribing too so you don't miss my future video when I let the Vega Frontier Edition loose with a 7th generation jump in CPU performance, hopefully coming soon. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch.